so and quite weak. If you asked him, Sahib, how are things? He would say, Maja to vadti જ જાય છે. That means the maza keeps on increasing in my life.
It's beautiful.
So he never said that I am not happy. If he came out of a music program and he didn't like, I mean, he thought the music was not great, he would still say, Badhu saru to hoya જ છે. Everything is always good. Then he would tell you that no, this was not good, this was not good. But badhu saru to hoya જ છે. And that attitude was wonderful. Sudipta, I don't know if you ever had the chance to meet Kapasi Sahab.
No.
Wonderful.
Morning, Sunita. Morning.
Good morning.
We started a school, primary and secondary school, which is one of the best schools in Ahmedabad. And in that school, when there was a cricket match, in the old days when there was radio commentary only, so every class had a public address speaker. So he would put on the commentary and classes would be suspended for the 3 days or 5 days, whatever was the test match, because he thought that these things are important in life. In the morning, instead of having an assembly of all the school in one place, they would all have assembly in their classes. And again, some music would be put on. So Kumar would be there or he was a great music lover. So if the student said, na to bahut saru chhe farithi, so it would be played again. As many times as they wanted.
So it's a Badu Saroche, na? I'm learning now Gujarati.
ગુજરાતી પણ સારું બોલે છે આ છોકરી. હા, વિઘ્નેશ આવી ગયો.
Hello, sir.
What time is now in Australia?
1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Oh.
I just finished lunch and sitting down.
1 o'clock in the afternoon. How many hours of difference we have? Mexico and Australia.
I think it's the other side of the world. What time is it there?
10 p.m.
Ah, yeah. It's not exactly opposite.
15 hours.
Crazy.
So we are, you all are here, right? All from Kotla are here? Or are you waiting for someone?
There's Nivedita, but I think she had a meeting with her work, so I don't know if she will join.
We could start then, I think.
Yeah.
You have.
Okay.
Yeah. Bansi, you want to share screen? Or you want me to?
Yeah. So we'll wait, I just need to.
Mine is ready, shall I?
Yeah. So we'll directly present the Miro or the PDF?
The PDF.
Then I think you can share, yeah.
And you can keep the Miro on in case when you need.
Yeah.
Is it seen?
Yeah, it is seen.
Okay. Yeah, Bansi.
Yeah, so I think we just quickly go over Mehroli's values. So the idea was to believe in a larger environment where you look at the ways of living which were accepted or followed by tribes such as nomads or indigenous, not focusing on the user group, but rather the way they tried to involve all the things in nature as equal and make it a part of their regular life, like a circular ecology, if we can say. So we took that forward, and we had this text. Shall I read out the text?
Yeah.
Okay. The overall sense that Mehroli's core values seemed to communicate was that a larger environment in which humans were a part. It described a relationship between humans and the environment that would draw from the values of nomads and indigenous people in today's turbulent times. Who are these nomads in Delhi? Are they residents of Delhi who feel like a stranger or have no space to express their emotions, or are they literally homeless people or perhaps migrant? In that case, we have been in all these positions too, sometimes homeless, sometimes migrant, sometimes with no identity. So it becomes essential to stop looking at them as others. Also, this brings us to the concept of the nomads entering and exiting a given system periodically without exhausting resources. Therefore, we understood that it meant a way of looking at the world. Of looking at the world.
The relationship.
Yeah, the relation between human and nature, where cycles are important since environment is directly home. We considered that not deleting labels was then fundamental.
Not me. It was deleting labels was fundamental.
Deleting the labels was then fundamental. Sorry. Uh, to avoid the trap of the preconceived notions, we focused on experiences, people who live according to natural cycles in terms of food, waste management, and traditional passed down knowledge, inclusivity for all, and permeable blurred boundaries. While we imbibed the overall value system and the idea of living that was portrayed by the core values, we pondered further on how these systems could work within the larger scheme of the fast-paced city. At this juncture, setting the ground, the role of the doer or the facilitator, that is the karigar, the material used, and the tools and methods employed to achieve the task is essential. In context of the site and the alter ego, we now look at the karigar working with the remainder, the uchista, the avshesha left by the city, depositing a series of interfaces. Instead of a center periphery dynamic that through the hard boundaries, which nudges exclusion and marginalization. Um, in our program, we envision the remainder to be addressed through a system of interconnected nodes and networks. We intend for the materiality of avshesha at the nodes or to transform into spaces of learning, temporal markets, and places of interaction between each other and with land, water, and sky. These nodes would overlap and thereby create places of chance encounters and imbibe the idea of serendipity in the everyday. This would also imply a system of exchange of the values of accepting and using the avshesha by the city, whereby the nodes start to create a larger realms of influence that will have the impact even beyond the boundaries of sight. Could you scroll down?
Yeah, sorry.
Maybe Sumi did it a little bit, no?
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a sec. Let me see if this zooms and zoom.
No, it's okay. I'm pointing it and reading.
Yeah. Okay.
Respecting land and ecology as the primary material that we shape into creating these nodes along the site. As karigars, we thus look at the idea of remainders, material that has been left behind by the functions of the city, and how they can be seen as a starting point to give life to something new.
That's
so
all we have on this, right? Yeah. And then we did the program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Andy, you want to take it further?
Yeah.
Yeah, just that I would definitely need to zoom in a little bit because I cannot see properly. So yeah, basically, like from going from that analysis and that we digested the program of Mehroli, then we made the program. So but I do need to zoom in.
A second, I will have to download it and open it again. Just give me a minute, guys.
I mean, otherwise I have it. I can share screen, no problem. Huh?
Okay, I just opened it from Slack. Yeah. Yeah, you can share screen. Okay, do.
Okay, so it's here. I'm able to open it. So you can see my screen, yes?
I'm closing it.
Yeah. So,
You will have to stop sharing screen.
Yeah, I'm doing that. Sorry, a little slow. Are we okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's working my screen now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So, well, from what we understood, we had some discussions and we said, okay, a place that is inhabited and not occupied. The place site is not to be inhabited by humans, but for the necessary period of time, as opposed to occupied for indefinite periods of time. Lightly inhabit the ground without exhausting resources. Because the Meroli's team, they were very biocentrist. That's what they wanted to focus on the nature. So that's why empathy towards all beings. The design approach is to be empathetic towards existing conditions and all user groups. That means animals and everyone that can be there. Interfaces of exchange, porous, semi-permeable, and multifunctional activity encounters. The edges are to be perceived as a series of interfaces which form a porous, semi-permeable edge through which exchange of ideas, knowledge, and material can take place. So yeah, that is very important for us. Nodes are to be perceived as spaces where two or more activities are encountered. So we thought about like a network. Well, I'll show you later in the sketch in the schematic drawing that we made that nodes are there. For instance, well, you want to say that one? It's my Mastika Pachala. Exchange of knowledge, the Epiphany Bazaar, exchange of the material and emotional reflections, the Kotla Otla, empathetic edges between the public and the private areas, the Alleviation Gully, healing does not mean damage never existed. It means the damage no longer controls your life. The Bandar Bhai Nagar, inclusive spaces towards all animals and life forms. Every program to be addressed in two scales, intimate and cluster level. The implications of sight. Emphasis on pedestrian movement through geography. All program elements to be dispersed throughout the site with respect to relationship with the land, water, air, and sky, and nodes and interfaces. They should not occur at singular junctures. As all zones are envisioned as multifunctional spaces in order to take them more dynamic and enable multiple user groups to experience the space differently as various times of the day and week. All program elements to be made to of the remainder materials. This point is important because we were thinking of recycled materials, but we think that the word trash or waste has already like a preconceived idea definition. So we thought about the remainder. If someone wants to explain about the myth, that would be awesome.
So, sir, when we were explaining to Riyaz and Sudipto the other night, actually, we had got stuck with various points of our discussion, and then we came to this point that our material is the remainder, means it is the recycled materials. What we wanted to say that the city of Delhi is creating a lot of waste, uh, and and we are wanting to use those recycled materials as our material, and that is the material given to the karigar, and now what he does about it. We also looked about it like if there is a point like we just make one particular item of a material, then people see it as an art form or an art installation and forget it and move on. But if an entire space of a 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers radius is created of these recycled materials, it becomes a movement of the city. And therefore the implications of this is much larger than the site. So it becomes like an alter ego that the city has created this for you, but you have converted it uh, with your available ideas and thoughts into something new and something which can be used. So we looked at things like, one of the ideas which we had was a floating platform over the river, which is made of like these waste plastic, and it has these hydroponic plants which cleans the river, as well as at that same time it, uh, it there is a lot of flora and butterflies and everything comes into it. So when we are looking at taking care of, this was one of the example, or the example of making benches or resting places out of materials which were available, or like taking the sewage water, like from Mr. S. Vishwanath's presentation, taking the sewage water through a particular place and then using it to grow mulberry to, or any other plants which we have yet to research, that which could be used as fodder for the cattle, or you know, looking at some space for these kind of chabutras or gaushalas where these animals which are disbanded or which are no longer used, not used I would not say, but which are no longer accepted in the city, are taken care of in a certain way. Or we have like places,
But I
like
think we can go through those details.
Yeah. So we
yes.
also, then we converted, so we had a sketch which showed then we converted it into a section which was going through. So this was our first diagram which we did.
But first, I think we should explain this one.
Yeah,
so
you can explain this. Yeah,
so what is this? It's, we made a matrix. So after the discussion with Sudipto and Riyas, we decided to look up for these activities, like in order to get rid of labels and things that come with who is using the place and which kind of places are happening. Then we decided to focus on like yes, user groups and places, and then when they meet each other, then what happens, what kind of activities happen. So we decided to design according to these activities which are happening. So we just made like a lot of ideas, we just all started like putting everything that we wanted there.
So this was not fully complete. This was work in progress, and then we had to put it together. That chart is not fully complete. We were going on and on with it.
Because also we were trying to get it in order, like getting sketched and everything. So basically, what came out were like this series of sections of how the environment or anything like is related uh, to to the activities that are happening. So there will be a lot of, like, for example, contemplation and the way the river, like it is. I forgot the English name.
This is the moat around the fort. This is the moat around the fort. It's like a section from across.
Outside the fort.
And
this
it has
is outside the fort.
Yeah. So I think one of the things. Well, okay. So this is about the arts, no? Like
yes.
there will be performances, and yeah. So we'll have a space for a lot of performances and arts. And like also the way that we play with the geography will help in that. This is part of that one, no? I think.
Yeah.
Yes. And then here, for example, there are some plants growing, and there is a woman, but it's not very good quality, no? Should we put it on the Miro board probably, or do we have it there?
No, it's only this one has become less. You continue, Bansi. Sorry, Andrea. Continue.
So there are some plants growing. So we try to go in the section also through the plants and through the people. So this woman actually has a skeleton and the organs and everything there. And she's taking medicinal plants. Or, I mean, it can be medicinal plant, it can be anything else. We like leave it to interpretation. But just like there is this relationship between the plants and the person. Also, like they were talking a lot about ephemeral, the Mehroli's team, they were talking about ephemeral structures, well, architecture that go on cycles and everything. And we think that this very simple kind of a structure can work out, just like to stay there, like a shelter, small shelter, something like that. There are birds, also trees, and then this is the river now.
No, these are like, there is a drain and a water body which is happening in the site. So basically this is a water body which just comes within the site. So we wanted those floating hydroponics which goes over it. But that floating hydroponics we have shown when the drain comes later. So that there is a drain. So we are trying to say that we are acknowledging that there is a water body which is going through the site there. and it comes in.
That can be
We have a
integrated
choice
with our
later on to make it widen. Go ahead.
Shivani was going to say something.
I think these water bodies are integrated with our healing spaces and made part of the program.
So then, no, this is then we have also like this section. It's a shame that the quality is not proper, but they're monkeys, and then there's this little path where the ants go and everything. Then there's the tree, and so we want to like well, this also like going well, it shows like if you were in a space and you can also go into another kind of space. So this is like sort
It's a
of a what
pause. The orange signals tell that you need to pause in life and you need to go into these contemplative spaces. The orange was the pause of the literal signal, which we, that's Nivedita.
Nivedita's drawing, yes. And also she wanted like this to be like a water path or something like that with some stones, and you can go and yeah, just relax.
Then we have this concept of this remainder stop at this pause, wherein people like, it's like something like a, imagine it like a bus stop where you come and just give away your good clothes or donate your extra shoes and or even fruits and vegetables. Food means not cooked food, but fruits and vegetables which you want to give. And anybody who wants, as a passerby or a homeless, can take it from there. So it's like books or clothes or shoes. So it's a remainder stop. What you consider as what you have extra, you come and give it here, and anybody can pick it up from there.
And also that is like responding, that idea comes from the response of the cycles of how this cycle life.
What is not useful to you may be useful to somebody else.
So then we have this structure also. We are planning to that all the structures can be done from recycled materials or remainders, and so we have this space used in the daylight and then on the night. So there are like, yeah. So there's the night, and there the same shelter. It can be like a shop or something, and during the day, and then during the night, it can be a sleeping person there. And here's the chaiwala. He is also sectioned, and then there's a woman here and a man here, and then there's a dog. So there's like different and different
like tires and etc. can be tires filled with sand and all could be used for seating.
And and we also even put some bottles here. How the structure is done, like we can just play with that, and we want to make it very evident. Then we have here this well there's this experience that we thought about, like that from the poop you can make different products like paper, or like it is used also to make like fuel to burn something, or I don't know, but we are trying to put this relationship of like how even the remainders of like this poop from a camel can be used somehow. So we're trying, and also since we are next to the zoo, like there's a lot of material we can use there. And then there's the concept of tianguis. I don't know, Chai, if you remember the tianguis of Mexico, that they are just like from a couple of days or just one day per week, for example, and then they go away, and they start in the morning, then they go in the evening, they occupy the whole street. So we thought about that, like it can be just ephemeral structures, and they can go and sell things, and they also are meeting point for community. Then there will be cows, there will be people around, and then we have here also a sort of a market. It's some quite similar to Tianguis, but this one is more like the Indian way that it's happening. So I mean, this one will also be Indian, of course. It's just the same. We're just talking about the ephemeral characteristics.
Basically, and, various levels are there created. When Raj had created this sketch, various levels are created. And what happens here also, he's trying to show the same thing. The person is sleeping behind in the afternoon. So there is somebody selling, but behind the shop, somebody is taking rest. This kind of happens in Bombay Crawford Market, wherein somebody is selling and they take turns. You know, the shop is kind of open almost like, I cannot say 24 hours, except for 4 hours in the night. It's kind of open. And in the night also the goods come. So there are people who are continuously working. So when somebody is working, somebody else is taking rest. and it's like the cycle which is going on. And continue, Andrea.
Yeah, and this one is the shelter again, like because they talked a lot about shelters. So this one shows like even if it's raining in the storm, even like the sound of the storm, and you can be here safe, drinking a chai, a garmi chai, garam chai. Then rain again. I don't know why the size is so different from the clouds. Sorry, the rain is happening here, and it's like the plants are growing, and then there's this man just like he should be also under the rain, but yeah. So then the contemplation it repeats.
Then we are
Then
moving towards the river, and we had these like swings made of tires put onto the trees which are near the river, and then we had these floating platforms, and we also saw this concept of adding tourism into this, where there is this concept of fishing whale which is in Amsterdam, where they ask tourists to kind of do fishing for plastic bottles and everything, and which kind of helps to clean up the canals and things of Amsterdam. And they kind of award prizes and they have races and all that. So we thought something like that could be integrated, wherein if these so we are trying to show that people are not fishing for the fishes, people are fishing for the plastic, and the fishes are thriving happily. That's what we are trying to show.
And yeah, this is the platform. No,
this was the floating platform. Yeah, because of our sheet length, I think it just got compressed here, but it's floating, which has hydroponic plants which kind of cleans up the river in a way. And then there's butterflies and everything growing on those hydroponic plants. So here we also wanted to point out the point that we are not trying to say that the entire place is going to be taken over by nature like foxes and elephants and stuff, not those kinds, but we are trying to say that whatever the animals which are already existing in this place will be taken care of in a better way than what they are in the current scenario. We are not trying to introduce new species which are going to be taking over the space. That's something which we discussed. And
yeah, and just like really fast, because I don't think that like we already taken some time. This one is about the notes. Yeah,
you go on, Andrea. Yeah.
Okay, so there are these notes that happen, and actually, well, do you want to explain about the notes, because you made the watercolor one?
Okay, so basically the watercolor diagram behind it, we started it with this. We started finding out about native trees of Delhi, and then I started reading through Pradeep Krishan some photographs which were there on his blog, and then we came to this plant called ronja, which kind of had these flowers growing in this pattern, which was like there was a node, there was a flower, then it goes to a node, and then another bunch grows, and then there's another branch grows, and then there's another branch grows. So we kind of took inspiration from that as our nodes, and then we superimposed it on the site, and then we tried to kind of create a diagram through that image of the thing which we had, and we tried to put the nodes on it. But this was like majorly work in progress, and then it kind of didn't maybe convey what we wanted to.
Yeah.
So within it, we had all these places of contemplation, doing, selling, markets, places of interest. Also, we also looking at interconnected thing when we were talking, like a place of healing is also a place of learning. Like you go there for a relaxation massage or something, but you learn about some medicinal plants and you come back. Or a place of, so we were not trying to look at singular activities. We are trying to say that each space has multiple implications
like
and activities.
Juxtaposition of things which come together and then form the other dedicated space.
And yeah, so basically, that's it basically. Should I stop sharing my screen?
No, keep it on. I think
keep it on so that they can see it.
Okay. You are in mute.
Yes. First, I'd just like to say wonderful, lots of very, very good ideas. And then we need to develop them. Uh, but about the remainder. Mm, in the Upanishadic thought and the subsequent thought processes, the whole world is a remainder. If there is a interaction between entities which ends in zero, then there is no world. The world comes about when there is a remainder. Manifest comes about when there is a remainder. The unmanifest is something which we cannot even imagine, but it is without remainder. But the world, life, all of that is the remainder of what the gods ate.
Exactly. Yeah. This
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
No, so
Mm.
literalizing it is slightly diminishing the sense of it, I think. Though, okay, we can look at reusing materials, which is fine. I have nothing against that. Except that every use is a reuse. There is nothing which is initially used. There is no new. And there is no old. For example, I mean, your creatures which are cleaning the water, what are they eating? They are eating what your body will consider dirt, which is harmful. But to that creature, it is food. And it's new food. You know, that shit is new for the bacterium. So every material is new or it is always in reuse, irrespective. So I think the hierarchic or the uh, dual division of materials into something which is new and something which is reused, the dyadic division is something that comes from a different model of logic. It is a logic which divides and then evaluates one versus the other. So whatever you are doing is fine. I have nothing against it. But don't glorify the reuse over the use. This is something, because otherwise there'll be a huge demand for used plastic bottles now. And the world will make plastic bottles only so that you can make such places. What do you think of that? I'm taking it to an extreme. But what I'm saying is, consider the earth, the soil on which your section is drawn. Is it fresh or old? And did the cloud not reuse the water? So everything is continuously in a cycle, which is what you are saying is don't harden it to such an extent that it cannot flow into the cycle. What you are saying is let material be such that it can dissipate in a manner without becoming an obstruction. So plastic is an obstruction because it lasts 500 years and it can clog up. So that is why you're saying, well, we will bring it and make the permanent things or those which last for a long time out of that. But we will also use other materials such as soil, such as branches, such as the threads, which will need to disintegrate. So you've got two kinds of materials. One material which remains unchanged over long periods of time, and other material which changes, disintegrates, and needs renewal. And the proportionality of the permanent or the long lasting to the changeable is what you are fascinated by, as far as I can read. And I think the drawing, you should take one node only. Take one node and look at what are the interactions there. For example, you said that there is health and there is learning, which are connected, and then there is exchange, which you said is of two kinds, a material exchange and an emotional exchange. Now, how does this form a cycle? That's a wonderful way of thinking about it. How does it form a cycle? How does it make? Will it need anything more? So I come back to your notion of everyone being a nomad. Yeah? Somebody lives in one place for 80 years and dies, but he is also a nomad in this world. He came and he went. Swami Agnivesh went yesterday. He was a nomad. And one who comes, walks through is also a nomad. So all are nomads. Ashok Bajpai also said that yesterday, that there is no Dilli wala. All are outsiders. So if then there are people who are stabilizing for different periods of time. Yeah? Somebody who visits and goes away, whom you call a tourist, but I would say visitor. Yeah, because the tourist has got a special color of a wallet from which you extract money. Huh? Tourist is a kind of bag of money which is moving around the world. And there are companies which suck out the money and take it back to the country where the tourist came from. And the people who are stationed there get nothing out of it. That is what would be a nice definition of tourism. So I will say a fleeting visit to a stationing in place are both inhabitations. So who are the people who will live here? This is a very interesting question. If I assume that 5,000 people are going to be here every day, or 10,000 or 50,000, I don't know, how many will be living there? And what will be the, yes.
No. Please continue.
What will be their cycle of life? Where will they get water from? Where will their wastewater go? Those who come, where will they use? Where will their waste go? If they eat, where does the food come from? Now, if you think about a node concretely, then all these things will happen. So I suggest that each one of you make one node. And with slight modifications, there can be 30 created out of that. Then look carefully at the land and start locating the nodes. Nodes will be of many kinds. Those which are near the river, those which are far from the river, those which are on the routes of public movement, those which are away from the routes of public movement, etc., etc., etc. The categories can be made different kinds of lists, which that chart or the metrics that you had made will give you some ideas for that. And each one take up 3-4 nodes and make the nodes as if it is a small place which happened in a or which happened in the country. You know, we come across these small places there and kind of make that.
Am I the only one who is having like?
Sir, we can't hear you.
There are some problems with connection.
Oh, I see. Is it better now?
Yes.
Just hold on. Hold on. It is? Is it better? Yeah?
Can you talk again?
Yes, I'm saying whether, can you hear me all right or not?
Yeah, if you switched off your, Prabhalcha, if you switched off your video, it might save some bandwidth. Yeah.
Okay, right. So I'm saying, take up a node. I mean, take your matrix, find out the different kinds of nodes that you have. You heard that part, no? I talked about the different kinds of nodes. Yeah. And then each one take up 3-4 nodes and design them actually. Then come to the site and look at where they will locate themselves. Where would it be best? Out of that will emerge a spatial structure of the site in which there are all these wonderfully free connections between nodes. And the zones in between
It's again, there's a problem.
Oh, okay. Let me move this place. Just hold on. Yeah. Should be better now.
Yes.
Yes.
Much better.
I had moved to another place away from the router so that people in the house would not get disturbed. Sorry about that. Now I'm back at my normal place.
Good. So you were saying about the places between the nodes.
Yes. There is that empty territory or is that full territory?
So it depends.
Huh?
It depends on how we look at it. Empty and full means empty by a human, but maybe full by ants and termites. Or means it's a perception issue, right, sir? Empty and full is a perception. Full of trees, empty of people, or full of people, empty of trees. Maybe if I'm not.
But even I think
So,
because like mostly in the city, what happens is that there are some nodes, we can say, that are planned and designed and everything, and then the in between spaces are filled in with like free activity, like people will use or will take the ownership of those spaces. That is that what you're trying to say?
It's somewhat like both of what you're saying. Let me put the question another way. Does the node have a back?
no.
Oh.
No, because we discussed about this
But the way,
part.
how is it possible? How is
Because
it?
the front of one is the back of the other, and the back of, there is no front and back in a.
Be careful.
Yes, sir.
The inwardness of that node, as you have drawn it, the solidity versus the gap. You understand what I'm saying? As I read it in your plan,
Okay, that. Okay.
then how do you get a space?
Now go to the right side ones. The ones which we have done on the right side, the cheesy, the ones which look like piece of cheese. The ones which look like piece of cheese. There only in the same drawing.
But
yeah, on the right. Yeah, the one. Yeah, the middle one. Yeah. We took a solid and we carved a path and we carved like a node in no on the right, the bottom right, southeast. Yeah, that one.
Okay, let me still let me put the question another way. Can there be any body without a back? Why are we making the back bad and the front good? A tortoise shell. Is the more important is the shell or the inner soft tortoise?
Both are.
So what I'm trying to get to you is this idea of node is dependent on the idea of texture. It is not independent of anything else. It is the roots which started intensely connecting in a texture which became nodes. It is not first nodes and then texture. You understand? These are interrelated. And so, when you are thinking about the nodes, think about the farms or the gardens or the sort of chicken areas or the boat areas or the tree areas around them or other people around them. Okay. Then you will get something real. Don't think about the node as only consisting of 6 parts crossing.
Yeah. Yeah.
There is something very exciting possible if you are, while you are doing the node, the idea of the texture is all the time pulling at your mind.
That's what you were saying about the playing with the scales, not like going.
Yeah. So do this, and I think then, as I said, put it on the site with great care. So it will require one, half an hour of joint work to decide who does which notes, and 1 or 2 hours of work independently of making the notes, or 3 hours, and then coming back, there will be again a kind of a joint work, maybe another 2 3 hours. Then you will start getting a kind of texture happening here. Yeah, you talked about porosity, which is the quality of texture.
Yeah.
When we think about nodes, our attention is on points. At the same time, there is the fabric. Keep the two all the time pulling at each other. So in every case, what have we done? When we talked about material, we said there are different rates of deterioration of materials, and some which are more permanent, some which are less permanent. Then when we talked about human beings, we talked about the same thing, some who stay longer and some who stay shorter. And then we talk about the nature of uh, space. Then again, we come to somewhere the space has stabilized. Towards the insides of the node, it has stabilized into relationships. And towards the outer ends of the nodes, there is a kind of possibility of change. It is less defined, and so on. If we think like this of gradations, then you'll start getting something quite different, or quite the same, but more evolved, I would put it that
way.
Yes, sir.
What time is the submission? it's in the evening of Sunday or Saturday?
I saw that Viggy had written 2 o'clock on Sunday on this.
Okay.
But Sudipta, do you think it can be little later on Sunday?
I think so. I think, like you said, they can submit and go to sleep.
Yeah, because of the time differences also, we have to keep that little bit of a...
Yeah. Because 2 o'clock in the afternoon becomes 10:30 a.m. in the morning. Yeah. So if we get a time till at least 10 o'clock in the night or something, then we are good, because our proper working time is 6 in the PM to 10 PM in the night.
Okay, so Viggy, what about that?
Yes, sir. I'll just remove the 2 o'clock. It was an arbitrary thing anyway. So we just say Sunday.
Yes. No, you can put a time, but later in the day. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Great.
Viggy, maybe we can do something like 9 p.m.
9 p.m. Okay.
We can look at it and be ready for the next day then.
Yeah, I think that 2 o'clock was put in the instructor room.
Yeah.
So it was for the instructors than for the...
Yeah, so I don't remember looking at it. So
No, I'll put 9. I'll change it to 9 p.m.
Thank you.
Do you think there is any value in getting a little bit of scale to the drawing, because the
No,
section
we will get into the drawing. Actually, the section was sort of distorted. Some of them have got compressed and some of them have become big. And we agree that there has been some misrepresentation, because when we have stretched on this and we look at it more carefully, and we will do it in the next version.
I wonder if sections through the Purana Killa, I've been trying to look for it, would have helped. I'm still trying to get some for you. Whether that, because the height inside the Purana Killa is higher than the outside, because you ramp up and you do inside.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking for them too actually when I was drawing that section, but I couldn't really find, so not sure.
We got rough ideas from the Google Earth street views that there's some here and some there, but
Yeah, and I
But
think, sorry, go on.
No, I just want to say that I even like had a lot of fun drawing the camel because I had to go through the anatomy of a camel. But yeah, that scale thing, it's fun. Go ahead.
Will
So,
everything remain at ground plus 2.5 meter height in your program?
pardon,
Will
sir?
everything be maximum 3 meters height?
Yes, so we have
Sorry?
not conceived anything as growing multi-story. We have not thought of anything multi-story, frankly.
There is no multi-story up.
But
Terrace,
uh,
that's it.
yeah,
Then we go to the terrace. Then once we go to the terrace, we feel like making a little shelter there. वो बरसाती बन जाता है. Then after some time you enclose the barsati, then you come out. Then you feel like going to the next level of that. It is not multi-story building. Human beings have done this for ages. Even the Dogons do it. They make that beautiful little ladder of wood. You know, have you seen the
yeah.
Dogon ladders? They're fantastic. So don't categorize things so much. Follow the way it will grow. One who has stayed there for 50 years will have sons. The sons will get married, and then they'll have children, and then they will want some space for themselves alone. And then like it keeps on. Sansar hai saab. Huh? Now imagine life really.
And it also is there is a wish to see what is beyond, and that's where people go up.
That
The
wish is,
desire to see what is beyond.
you know, that wish is often more in architects than in others. The taking care of my children comes first. No, but you're right. You're right. The big vista, but your trees are so tall, will be that you won't be able to see far.
Yeah.
So you will have to go to the river edge to see far. Or you will have to have a tower somewhere.
We were talking about having an observatory tower to have connection to the old city and to India Gate, and you know from there people there will be a telescope and people
No,
can
but
see the India Gate.
observatory of what?
Observatory, no, means like a tower where people can connect to the old
No, but what will they look
Delhi.
at? What will they look at?
They will
Crows
look
fly
at
over the
the
city.
other part of Delhi. From there.
Why should they
Everything.
go far?
Everything, basically everything, just like that.
No, sky first, Baba. ये मस्ती की पाठशाला में आप लोग कुछ no astronomy is possible.
Possible.
What is this masti ki pathshala?
Learning about everything, and
Which thing? You are
no,
only
we had talked about land, water, and sky. So
that
astronomy
masti.
is a part of it. Now that
Huh?
we're not saying so seriously, astronomy definitely is a part of it. If we look at it,
So is mathematics a part of it?
yes,
And physics?
yes, definitely,
And history?
yes,
And sociology?
yes.
तो फिर कहाँ होगा? Where will it happen? Which node?
So we had the idea that these programs should not be concentrated in one node, let's say. So you have astronomy happening over the star, or you can have agricultural
What
learning
is the
happening over.
nature of a sociology node? Will it be in a market? What will be the nature of an astronomy node? Will it be at a high place, etc.?
Okay.
So I think one challenge that we got constantly are the labels that we went through, like from the user groups, like we said in the text, of who are the migrants, who are the nomads, and everything. And we decided to go to activities. So, for example, now that you're saying about sociology and about astronomy and about all this, I think it will be easier to understand them as activities, and then we can do the notes hidden there.
Okay. Dipper, yes. Yes.
No, I think there is enough in what you just told them. Um, they, the last time we had discussed with them, there was a certain distance that I felt that they had from the subject of their engagement. And the distance was as a scientific distance. And that scientific distance, is a modernist distance, somehow needs to kind of break down into a where, and I think partly with the section it has broken down. You come close to that where the person is sleeping behind and you're engaging in that. So that I think that is certainly something that is starting to happen. Earlier, the plan view kind of distances yourself. But how can you in fact get intimate also in the plan, like you have in this section, is something that's of great interest to me. The Riaz, I think, had another point which he mentioned on the chat with me, which I'm sure he will talk to you about. But to me, I think the plan as a drawing also needs to be as interesting as your section is getting to be.
Yeah.
We work on it.
Yeah, I just felt that I like Sudipta. I think that the section has wonderful possibilities, and you started getting closer to things, and also the material and this idea of uh, of a cycle. I just want to say that in the act of drawing this section, it still feels to me that the section is in an empty space. I don't sense in what it is. My sense is in which Delhi is this. That was my first question. Could this be just on? It could be anywhere else. So I think that it's really important to draw layers of things that just because you are near to certain things doesn't mean that one is not cognizant of what is far away. Whether you see a very geometric skyline in the background that talks about the Delhi that is, and then when you take one side of the section and it actually has to confront that hard Delhi, that singular Delhi that you guys are critiquing, how does it meet? Do you have a node over there? Is there a particular way of meeting the existing city? And I think this has to do with the back that Professor Chaya was talking about in one way. But I would like to see the physical things of which this section is a part, and I think that will kind of help you ask and respond to the question as to where is the sociology observation and where is the physics observation, what is the quality of that space, and how do I kind of make it continuous, or again the issue of the cycle with the city that does exist. So I mean, these are the ways that after looking at your drawing, I felt one can get more into it.
Sure.
Also, I think sorry, please, Professor Chaya.
Yeah. Just because Riaz mentioned material, I sensed yesterday that there is some difference in the way in which participants are looking at, when I say material, what is understood. The two senses of the material. One is that with which you build is one sense of material. But I did not really mean that. I meant take into cognizance material reality, which means the different interactions that go on in the world, whether it is food becoming waste or water becoming something or something becoming something else. This is material reality. And I meant that there has to be a certain materiality to your thinking, which takes into account interactions in a concrete and physical sense, not as a set of free floating data interacting. one of the things that has come to our minds through this entire system of logic, which has been colonizing minds all over the world, is the notion of freeing data from reality and then seeing only abstract relations, which Sudipta was talking about just now. I sense. I think Sudipta was talking about modernism in that sense. And that there is a concrete and tangible, graspable sense of materiality to our existence. That has to come through in the drawing. That is what I meant.
Yeah.
That's a big task.
We will, I think, yeah, we will try another
No,
attempt
but
at it.
that is our task. You have to remember your own height and width. You have to think about how far you have to be from somebody else. You have to think about what happens when 20 of us come together. Then we have to think about what happens when an elephant walks into the room, and so on. Yeah. These are material, graspable realities. What somebody called the 10-fingered grasp of the world. Yeah. That
You were talking,
yeah.
you were talking about the old and the new, and that there is nothing that is old, and there's always the old is new for somebody else. And so Archaeological Survey of India keeps digging up inside the old fort. They keep digging up and they keep finding objects which they believe are from Indraprastha, which is 400 BC. And so whenever you go to old fort, they have dug up and they have displayed all these old pots and brickwork and all of that there. So Delhi is a layer. It's also a gate in depth, not just in elevation. There are gates which are below you as well. And so your section, which looks like it's on new ground, must also realize that there is old ground below, or that old ground can become new ground. And that understanding of the ground is also very beautiful. And you've started drawing little ant hills and all that, which are kind of growing inside, or roots which are going down. But there is also, like, the way of going up. There is also a human tendency to dig up and dig down and go down.
Yeah, I think also, like, we have like about this free data from reality. I like that concept because also it comes like because a lot of the labels that I was talking about, they are like that, no? Like, they seem to be free, but they are not really, but they seem to, and you can just put it from in different situations. And I think like these words of old and new, they fall into that also. Like I'm always very surprised that a lot of cities have the old city and the new city, no? Or just the city and the old city. And so yeah, I think we have to go further on that one. But it's always mind blowing, this kind of discussions. I love it.
Actually, we fall into our own traps as well of words in gender, because the first thing that you guys said is actually there is no reminder. You were saying it's only the way we look at it, but then then it became an antithesis, and then you started playing with that world, and then you glorified it. You made a whole place for it as well. So we make something and then it becomes a thing in our head, and then we start following that rather than abolishing it then and there. And Krishnamurti says this: if you find something dangerous, like you find a snake, you won't go touch it. You know it is dangerous, you will drop it right then and there. And if you do that with the remainder, then how do you connect to the city is really fascinating for me. And that's where Riaz's point of finding what is existing in the city and connecting it through this understanding of the fact that there is no remainder. Everything is part of a larger process would be a beautiful way of tying all your work together, because it is all there. It's just we get caught up in some words and then we follow it, and it is like Maya, the concept of Maya. It's like it catches you and then you run with it in that sense.
Great.
So who is next?
Kakanagar is next.
So I think I'll go now. Good night.
Good night.
So this is what we received from the Dhalakon group, and we sort of discussed this amongst ourselves, and then we tried to figure out what is the whole narrative that they're trying to tell us. And I think initially, just not to be caught up with the words, we started reading the images. So maybe there were hints from that. Oh, am I audible? Is it better?
Now better. Yeah.
Okay. So I was saying that we started analyzing this whole map through the images first, so that we don't get caught up with the literal words in that sense. And we picked up a few hints, and we started recognizing spaces, and we analyzed why they would have probably used that image as a reference. Maybe it conveyed the idea of something more than what maybe the words were trying to say. So in that sense. And then we went around reading these terms, and we felt that it was a very diverse sort of a map, which sort of catered to a lot of characters that Delhi could probably hold in terms of the ideas and approaches that we were looking at, right from the whole idea of time, society, and resources, and all the merging entities would then fragment into these aspects of the city. So to probably quote a few, we looked at temporality, social, spatial justice, and the whole idea of undefined space, where you can leave certain places to be reappropriated with time, and you don't have to necessarily put a finger at every single area, and then we looked at how some of these intimate spaces emerge from tiny pockets in the city, even right from the whole street furniture, where it gets used in that way. And then the larger picture of the ecosystem, and the idea of affordability in terms of the city's economy, and then prioritizing public spaces over government spaces, which I think even we had in mind before we saw this map, where we said, the whole central vista and the vicinity feels so regimented that, people might feel intimidated to use it in a more informal way. So I think that also resonated with their core value. And just to kind of move on, we said this is so diverse, and it's going to be hard if we start trying to squeeze this into programs and try to put it up as a concept. So we rather found a lens in which we could maybe look at all of these entities. And that's when we said, maybe we should look at the land water threshold, where we talk about threshold in the spatial context as well as the temporal aspect. And that's the beauty of the word, where it holds meanings of two dimensions. And what we then started doing is we inspected some of the typical distinct aspects of the city, where this threshold is sort of examined through different scales, like from a very personal and a private singular scale to the more larger community and city oriented scale. And then we sort of saw how the water travels, and like from its source and back, and all these are the surfaces that they sort of transition through are what becomes the threshold in what we are trying to imagine that. So the way they're looked at talks a lot about how the city is, how the people associate themselves with these interfaces. So we kind of dwelled in it more, and we talked about the agents that have control over the accessibility with water. And that again determines the shift from a lot of community-based water resources to how they got privatized, and what that speaks about the water, how people look at water. And so we picked a few spots, like I mentioned, from the Najafgarh drain to the market space. And then we spoke about a neighborhood and
So Yamuna River Edge,
yeah.
an industrial or institutional place, and the neighborhood community. So we came up with 6 different scales. So can you? Yeah,
I should.
it just changes. So just leave it on
I'll
this
hold
note.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, the next one.
Okay.
Yeah. So we came up with. So this was our first studying of these nodes, these thresholds, where we started off with the Najafgarh drain and studying the fabric of the concretized edge and what could we do to like revive it and make it a little more uh, inclusive and temporal. Then the scale of a public toilet and a market space. Then how in domestic use, how the services can be adjusted and the idea of wetness to as small uh, as the connection of a plot with the road, and also the connection of the tap with the water that comes to our houses. Then the scale of the Yamuna River and how its edge is being used currently. Uh, then, yeah, so the different conditions of the Purana Killa Lake uh, and considering the water and land threshold in a neighborhood. Yeah.
We'll start with the Najafgarh drain, and I think the major observation that we picked up from this is the kind of interaction that the water plays here in when it's channelized, and what kind of ecosystem thrives around it. And when we started looking at that, we know that the water is polluted, so the associated flora and fauna are not going to be as in the case of a natural flowing river or a clean water. So in that case, how do we sort of look at the smaller aspects, or like look at the micro scale of this, where we talk about moss and we talk about the tiny creatures in the water, in polluted water, and how that can be used as something to sort of shift the whole narrative from the idea of monuments being Rashtrapati Bhavan or India Gate to kind of come down to a more playful narrative of this area, where we're saying, you know, what if we had a periscope to the site and we take the whole view towards the inside of the water, and probably something of this sort where there's a monument inside, and all of these natural growth of the phytoplanktons and all of the smaller water creatures and plants, which we're trying to sort of bring to the public domain and like make them see this, and add probably a story to it, which, you know, ties the public to this channel in a more informal sense, not as opposed to saying, come see, look what the mess you've done, and, you know, in a more subtle way, and still making that impact. And a lot.
And Sudipto was suggesting the idea of the old ground, where like while concretizing the edge, they almost forgot that there were some ruins or some gold coins, or maybe uh, like a part of Humayun's tomb, which was left underneath. So how, with the idea of the periscope, we could locate these lost treasures?
Yeah, the idea was also to introduce vegetation towards the edges of the canal. So the water not literally flows into the channel directly, but starts, you know, collecting over these tiny sections with growing moss, and with moss comes fireflies, and with the sort of smaller scale ecosystem with associated with grass and ground cover, then the whole sort of dialogue that we're trying to have is to look at the smaller aspects of this site. And then we were shifting to neighborhood scale, where we see the connection of the canal to the neighborhood, and then we have these little water chambers below each houses, and again that also there are bow wells. So what we're looking at is the whole system, like we're widening the lens and we're seeing where this water goes into the houses. But just before that, we noticed that there are these interfaces of the building facade, and these surfaces can also be something as a tying element, which sort of acts like a membrane that runs along from the horizontal to the vertical. And that functions as probably a purifying system, or the threshold that we're trying to discuss, that it travels through a surface. And these are the kind of surfaces that we're looking to address, where we look at the runoff and we see where the water goes.
Actually,
And,
I'd like to understand this one a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Is the water going from the Najafgarh drain into these tanks, or is it going from the buildings to the? I don't quite get it.
The runoff is taken down and then is then sent to the nala. It's towards the nala.
So that is in the rainy season.
Mm-hmm.
There will be water from the roofs, which will go along the facade of the building down to a place where it will then collect into a tank, and those tanks will all be connected to the Najafgarh drain. Is that right?
Yeah. So what we're trying to do is to treat the runoff through these surfaces. So
No, but the runoff is actually quite clean.
Sorry?
Rainwater can be collected even without any treatment. I drink rainwater every day. I have a collection tank. Only once the roof needs to be cleaned, 2 days in beginning of rainy season. Why do you need to treat that water? And then
okay. Yeah,
in the
sorry.
rainy season, both the drain is full, so the movement of the water is very difficult to understand, because everything will be flooded. There is no space for the rainwater to go into the drain in that season. See, this is not a drawing. It's a real thing that happens. Anyway, go on.
So then we looked at the scale of a commercial space or a market space, where the elements of a public toilet, or like say the boating culture, which is prevalent near the India Gate, and how that is sort of something that doesn't tie up with the idea of equity, where a certain community who can afford to do that will only be able to access the water, or in that sense use the whole recreational aspect. So in that sense, if we have to make it more open to everybody, there has to be something that doesn't involve as much money, or which is slightly more open in its program, as a performance space where street artists and people from that sort of community also engage with the water. And the idea of the public toilets is something which I think India has still been experimenting quite a lot, is to come up with something which functions well in commercial spaces. And the aspect of how unhygienic conditions and the odor and all that is kind of something which people have issues with. So the idea here is to have something that's open to sky, and it's taken care of in that way, and it also doesn't sort of stand as something ugly in a public space, but rather blends with the whole landscape. And then there's a pattern that emerges out of it, and the walls are just green, and that also kind of helps the treated water to function. So it's become like the self-sustaining unit. And So we're looking at the domestic scale now. Kevna?
Yeah. So then we were also looking at the domestic scale where it began from trying to understand how each of the houses are private and how they have thresholds which are very strong and there's almost no connect with the outside. And the connect need not be very visible, but we can try to incorporate into our piping systems and our incoming and outgoing water flows and water systems, where we begin to see how we uh, use some of the so one of the conditions here is the kitchen as a landscape, where there are different zones which are towards wetness from inside to outside, where we have the middle one where we begin to use the wastewater from kitchen into our own open land which is outside the house, which would also end up contributing to the systems of Yamuna and other water systems outside. And so this is kind of trying to open up the boundaries without actually opening them up, the thresholds.
And
Next one.
what things below?
These are the filtering chambers where one passes through the oil and grease. One is the plants which will absorb the. Sorry.
Why do you need to filter it?
The oil and grease will not be useful for the plants.
There's no such thing.
Mm.
In the Indian house, this water will flow into a bed where there will be 2-3 things. One will be alocasia, patra. You know, from Gurasis make patra, that leaf. Arabi is called root of. Capable of cleaning everything. Then there will be sugar cane. There will be banana. And it grows fantastically without, you don't have to do anything. It's only kitchen water, no? Huh? It's only kitchen water.
Yeah.
Yeah. कुछ नहीं है. This must have come from some high-tech, contemporary. We have been doing this for ages. I've eaten the best patras out of our own home little patch. It's only about 8 feet by 8 feet. Then I've got sugar cane, I've got bananas. And all the time we eat them. There's no problem. All oil and all go into it. There are things which take care of it. Nothing happens. Simplify. All those people will try to sell us all kinds of horrid things. And industries, big industries will be set up for making such things.
Even the detergents.
You have to do it in our own backyard. And then water cannot climb. Once having gone to that oil thing and then to that other box, whatever it is, how does it go up?
No, it's not underground. So it's all above ground only. Right now it seems like it is underground.
Slope, no?
Sorry?
It will be some slope, otherwise the water will not be able to go.
Yeah.
The place where it is produced will be slightly higher than the place where it is used. See, the thing is, all I'm trying to do is to make you imagine water as real. As matter. Anyway, go on.
So then we have the lake, Divya.
Yeah. So first we started off by so currently the lake is has been turned to an artificial lake And from Madhav Raman's presentation, and like after reading a few maps, we realized that this lake was connected to the river Yamuna earlier, where the river Yamuna was also wider than what it is right now. So we were looking at how we can connect this lake back to the river with some few nudges. Can you go on to the next one? Yeah. One next and then no, your map.
Achha, okay, sorry.
Yeah, map. Yeah. So, we thought of expanding the lake with like as it could be seen from the top. In the blue shaded area would be that region, and it would be connected underground with the river Yamuna. And there are four sections that we have cut for the revival of the lake. And Sana, can you go to the previous? Yeah. So the first one is so the last one is like the first one, which is the waterfront condition from the Mathura Road, where there is a prominent bus stop of the National Stadium, which has which usually has a lot of people. So how we could introduce a bicycle track and get a ghat-like system, connecting it to the river to open it out as public space, so that the like currently the lake is restricted from the public. Earlier there used to be boating, but now there's no boating anymore, and there's railing which makes it damn restrictive. So how we can make it a little more open to public. Then the next one is the uh, the waterfront condition from the bus depot, where we are keeping the bus depot intact as to however it is, and and create a waterfront for for the bus and truck drivers, for the bus and truck drivers to rest during their afternoon and evening batches. And how like to the right of it is like there is a settlement out there. I'm not sure of the name of the settlement, but how that land could be used for some inland farming by the settlement. Then there is like to the bottom there is there is the zoo, which already has a condition like this, but a part of the lake is been restricted with a road that gets us to the Purana Killa. So how we could extend the zoo by extend the zoo for inviting more native plants and native species of flora and fauna, and give that part of the lake to the zoo. And uh, yeah, and this is the part of the lake where there is currently only fauna, and that is the main entry from the Mathura Road. So how that could not be a public space, but like it could be a public space not for humans, but for other animals that are not a part of the zoo to come and rest in that space.
So, as an extension of that intervention near Purana Killa, where she's talking about the water sort of connecting to the Yamuna, the other aspect that we looked into was to read the whole ecological patch of this area, where we see the zoo and then we look at the bank of Yamuna, and on the opposite side we see the river, reserve forest and the river island. So when we look at these in ecological terms, if they don't have connects, what happens is they start fragmenting, and with time, with more urbanization, these will become smaller fragments. So it's really important for them to stay connected as in terms of the movement of all these wildlife to happen. And when we also plan for a city, we always think of how humans should have the 8th mile connectivity, but we barely acknowledge these movements, which remains unlooked at. So what we started to do is to reclaim this river edge, because we've read through certain news articles which says the NGT is proposing that this bus depot be removed because the oils from the bus which leaks into the river has posed a problem. So they said, this has to be removed, and there has to be a 300-meter buffer which is supposed to be proposed. And we also looked at the master plan, the land use plan, which said that this entire area comes under the community park, district park area. So where is that idea on site? So we said, let's use that to connect the 3 patches and also bring back the ecology around the river. And in this act, we are trying to thicken the threshold of land and water, where we say these white lines that you see are basically outlines of the river and the dynamic character of the river right from 2000, from like the Google Earth imagery. So this is the kind of phenomenon that we see here. And when we start doing this, the land doesn't behave the same way anymore. There's no porosity to the land. It's regimented, the edges are banked, and it doesn't happen this way. So that's the need for this edge to be softer, and we're trying to do that in that sense. And like I mentioned, that these movements of wildlife will be integrated with the existing linkages, because otherwise then establishing a foundation in the river would cause more harm. So we were trying to use the same linkages, but add another layer to it by thickening the whole use of the bridge. So this idea that I'm saying, that what if we allow the banks to flood, and what if parts of the high grounds of the floodplain are not accessible at some point, and when the water recedes they become accessible. And that's the whole celebration of the river edge, as opposed to how the entities that are associating with the river are purely industrial, or like the bus depot and all of that. But it's not accessible in that sense, that people don't get to visit the edge. And then with that element, the community, like we're trying to engage the community with the river edge, and we want something that that celebrates the temporality of the river, where we're saying, what if the materials used in this area are like rammed earth, where with time it just sort of becomes the floodplain, and it doesn't stand out as an entity which people have to bear with, in the future. So it could be as minimal as that, just playing with the landforms, and people could explore this area in that way. And what we're also trying to do is this linkage, which I'm showing you on the bottom. Yeah, that is the materiality of this linkage will be such that it shows age. It's basically stone, where the moss and vegetation starts to emerge, so which with time adds thickness to the material in that sense. So those are the kind of interventions that we're trying to say, that we want nature to take over a bit. It's too much to the edge, so we need to get the river in and do that. So that's the end of it.
Can we go back to the last drawing before this? Yes.
This one?
Yeah. So I think this is a wonderful potentiality which has to be thought through and brought to a level where we can confidently suggest it. I think there is huge potential here. I would say that while your earlier other studies of the Najafgarh drain and all that may be of some value, but it is time to concentrate on something, and I suggest that this image here should be your key image, where you are suggesting an entire interconnected zone of semi-wilderness. Yes. So now, the interesting questions then are, how does it come about? How is it made? It could be like the Ahmedabad riverfront, an engineering project, even though working with soft materials, given to a large company to do. Huh? Or it could be something in which thousands of people get work. People, animals, etc., etc., etc. In the older style of doing things. Divya, the Calcutta water studies that you had of the wetlands of Calcutta, they were not made by large-scale engineering interventions. They actually grew by people bunding parts. And it was a very interesting combination of people's activity and city infrastructure coming together at some point. Yeah? And I think it is possible because when this same drawing can be read as a as the work of somebody who is only interested in wildlife, species diversity, and would like to remove humans. Not that you have thought like that, but in our contexts, it is possible to show another way, because we have an economy which is not that far into the centralized model or the monetized model. Complete monetization of economy is not there. Therefore, it is possible to think of people inhabiting this as much as the fish do, or the other creatures do, and the very many plants do, and so on. Therefore, I think there is a potentiality here which is social, material, ecological. Now, it needs to be put across in that manner. For a while, I would say, put away all the conceptual words that you have. Not that they are useless. Threshold, for example, fine. All that is fine. Actually make it. Take 6 points on this topography. From the India Gate up to the river and beyond. And make the not just the drawing which says this is what will be done, but also a description of how it will be done. Where will the workers stay? And will they be migrant workers or will they be resident workers? You know, this partial nomadism is not a new phenomenon in India. And the movement from countryside to city, city to countryside, been going on. How do we now, in the new city, which is so cruel, how do we make this phenomenon of in-migration be a humane phenomenon? Not just think about the fish or the bacteria. Think also about these people who will make this place. It will have to be made like that. Otherwise, you will have to bring in earth moving equipment and L&T basically. Huh? Whereas it's a possibility of hundreds of gangs, each doing. Also, it is something that can be done over time. It need not be a 2-year project. It could be an ongoing 50-year project. Just imagine, if you can provide work and livelihood to 50,000 people for 20 years, isn't that a wonderful thing? So how will you do that in this, and you don't have any other land to look for to put them, and you don't want to bust them in, no? So how do you do that? To me, that is the most interesting question. And it will actually generate forms of settlement which have been which are learning from some other earlier notions, but which will need to be completely new. That's my response. The other things, very frankly, your studies of treatment of wastewater, etc., need a lot more study before you can really call it something. I would put it aside. I wouldn't use it. I think I would concentrate on this. That's my advice. Because there's a huge potential here on one hand, and there are lots of problems with the other one.
I also feel that, the other exercises that you did before this, the exercise 1, the 2, the 2A, and the 2B exercises have eventually led up to this. And, suddenly I find that there is a kind of a return to an urban designer / architect's old role as somebody who looks at the whole site as from a God's eye view, perhaps, and goes about it recommending, suggestions of that kind. So and Professor Chaya's comment is also a reflection of the bottom-up kind of an approach, which you probably need to, focus on a little bit more. I was quite amazed with your comment, Professor Chaya, because I would have thought that a top-down approach of commenting on this would have been appropriate, but you had this beautiful kind of way of addressing it from the bottom up, which is perhaps the right way. But I think that's a side comment to him.
No, but Victor, that's because I've seen Calcutta, and there the beyond Salt Lake and in the wetlands, the way people have done things is just amazing. What they're capable of. So the moment I saw this map, I could not resist. I was imagining, people starting to work at all kinds of places, and after 10 years they've reached halfway, and 20 years they've reached the river or something. And these, by the way, just to remind the students, the dotted lines that you have made, only some very large animals need a actual connecting path, like elephants do. Yeah? But otherwise, flying creatures and bacteria and such things can move across spaces, and they don't have any defined path. So this is something, again, this comes from a notion that comes from that philosophy which wants to fix everything. I remember when I was in SEPT, and unfortunately we had a planning department, which was advising. And do you know what they advised the Assam government? to actually build bridges for elephants. And I got shocked. I said, build the road to go over. Why not let the elephants just walk? But they made bridges, they made the road Sida, and the bridge went over. I had a huge fight with them. So these lines are notional and belonging to certain species only. That bridge may not even be required, very frankly. Yeah. Or your other islands, the river islands, was a better idea, I thought. You know, all those little shards of sand, that the sandbars. Yeah. Anyway, Sudipto, sorry.
No, so I think, you know, you will have to, I can sense that one of you is an urban designer. I don't know which one, or maybe all of you. But the whole idea of, you know, looking at practices, looking at what people do is so important to understanding how quote unquote development is something that can happen at a level which is not destructive. I don't know how else to put it. I think this requires a little bit of a longer engagement, but I think for the moment, it's important that you focus on Professor Chaya's comments and, you know, just go at it from those points that have been discussed, because you will get to it if you really kind of engage with it yourself at that level. Not try to solve problems, because if you try to solve problems, you will be overrun by them, and each problem will lead to another problem, will lead to another problem. But you look at it from a point of view of a practice which is regenerative, which regenerates opportunities one after the other, and not problems. And I think the little bit of stepping back in time is essentially to focus on such kind of practices which we might have lost over time, and to look at those practices which have been creatively regenerating opportunities rather than generating problems. And the kind of solutions that you know, architects and urban designers have started giving are solving problems at one end while creating others at another. And that is what exactly the situation where we are today. That's how we've kind of come to. And I think that that entire Najafgarh drain solution, or even looking at it as a problem to be solved, is essentially beginning to treat it at the back end of the problem rather than the front end of the problem.
I think something that Chayasa was mentioning about how the community starts engaging with the river and they start creating their own, they settle in their own way. It sort of reminded me of the culture of Bhopal's Manav Sangrahalaya, where they brought in the tribes and they said, you know, create your community here and people will come see it. And I think it was a really great idea because it was associated with the forest edge also, because the Van Vihar National Park is right there. So it's a very sensitive approach which really doesn't determine the result of it, but just initiates a process which then takes its own form through the years. And that's the whole beauty of, like, I think what even you were mentioning, that you know, you just initiate a process and, you know, you don't have to really determine to the last result of it. I think that's the sense of how I understood it. Am I right at that point?
This is something which we have had in this society for a long time. If you go back to, right back to the Chola period and see the entire Kaveri irrigation system, which is a huge system, but which is built by and maintained by the local villages. And to this day, today now there are some problems which have come up in the administration of it, but up to now, and this Elinor Ostrom's work on cooperation between people. Elinor Ostrom is a Nobel Prize winning economist, and her work is on cooperation. And one of the case studies is the Kaveri irrigation system, where there is a huge amount of discussion between the villages. And today you can see 1,000-year-old stone tablets which say which family is supposed to clean the canal when. And because they are allowed to farm there, so the land doesn't belong to them, they can farm, but in return, every 5 years, they will have to clean the tank or something like that. Yeah. So all of that is known in our area. In Calcutta, those guys did the same thing. So if we revive the spirit of activity, in which livelihood, ethic, concern for our world, all these things get combined, then you start getting something much, much richer. Yeah. And it is the complete opposite of the central vista in that sense, as to how it is brought up.
If we have to relook at the plan you have done with that kind of approach, would the interaction on the edge be continuous all the way through? Or would the dotted lines actually be from one interaction to the other? Would you just flip the dotted line and perpendicular, and then maybe have patches of communities connecting to the river, and the way they connect each other is by pure coincidence or by growth, or it happens as a natural process rather than a thought out continuous interaction all the way through? That is again going back to Sudipto's comment. That is a very urban designer-like or a planner-like approach. So for me, what would be more important is actually the traverse connection from the city to the river is much more of a stronger connection rather than having a continuous interaction all the way through the river. So in that sense, maybe your dotted lines can switch and be parallel to the river. And then, and you can also show like 4 or 5 sections cutting across in different places. And maybe in a couple of them, nothing is happening. It is the way it is. But then in 2 or 3 of them, the way the communities connect to the river can be different, or the conditions can be different.
We had actually been discussing a little bit, and in one of the videos that I had shared with all of them, we came across one of the communities in Japan which relies on spring water to clean and use it in their kitchen to clean all the vegetables. So the kitchen is actually located at in a slightly little chamber away from the house, and the spring water comes all along there, and you just dip in your vessels, or you just dip your vegetables and clean them there, and after you are done eating, you just leave your vessels and the food there, and once that is done, the fishes inside will eat it up, and there is almost nothing used, not even a detergent, nothing. And that's how they depend on the entire spring water, and they even make sure that the people who live in the downstream area, they don't get the polluted water. So it's all the water almost comes until their houses, and that's how they depend on water and use it within the houses. And
it's
it was
like
very
in a different way all over Bengal. The same thing. All the things go into the pukur, which is behind the house. You collect the water from a well which is in front of the house. Then you take, it goes into the pukur, part of the water goes underground again, and part of it supports. You catch the fish and eat them. Continuously, you got a complete circle. Everything goes into the pukur. It's quite a horrid thing in one way. You know, if you really think about it. But that's how it is. You just look up a Google image of villages all over Bengal. And this is how it is. And actually, if you go, and if you see some of the films, you know, Bengali films, then it will show this wooded area, and they'll never show the pukur. but the pukur is very important. So this thing is known all over the world. This way of consuming and then letting it regenerate. Only the market wants to make machines to clean the water with Hema Malini as its advertising person. And we have to beware of these people.
100% pure.
100% pure, Joe.
This reminds me of the tradition that I was talking about when the bride like when the newly married bride, she comes home and she has to hold the fish and leave it in the family pond, which I think is the backyard pukur that you're talking about.
She is saying things will multiply now.
Yeah.
There are many messages in that.
Oh, Sudipto, can we meet you at some time during the day because we want to understand the site a little and we have a few doubts about what exactly is happening on site.
Okay, sure. I'll post a time. But can it be after the lecture today?
Okay.
It can be before also, but I have to. I'm just trying to catch up on a few things.
Okay, after the lecture.
Yes. Shall we move on?
Yeah. So the last group is Majnu Katila, and they are now 3 or 4. Nikita, I can see, is back, but Nikita is trying to deal with her thesis submission at college, which is keeping her away. So this is the group that has only 3 people left. That's Mohil, Areman, and where is Smita? Smita, I don't see Smita.
Smita, right now she's not there, but otherwise she's there to work with.
Okay. All right. So if you want to share your screen, please.
So the core value document which we got was talking about how the coexistence of all the species happen together. Like there is and in between that coexistence, how are those? How is the justice happening to each and every species? So there is no kind of discrimination between the people also in between the people of that caste discrimination and in terms of the life other life also which exists within the city. So the things we questioned was like that how do we keep this natural flow of things, how do we maintain those cycles which are needed to keep in mind the different activities of the environment. So and how do we celebrate the notion of coexistence. So like all of that came that started with the realization of the boundaries which are there in the city. So there are these strict boundaries of roads and built things which have been created by humans that is either restricting nature or maybe making them adapt to whatever we build for us. So the thing which we thought about is that this whole green chunk area which has been marked over here. So the area here lies, there is this island and there is this restricted forest which is here. So and there are these agricultural plains over here. So what if what I we thought that to convert this whole area into a green zone where there will be trees like fruit trees of bear, mulberry, and other local species, like as Pradeep Kishan talked about in his lecture. So that fruit which will grow, that will provide the life with certain amount of what's something to munch upon. So like if at all there is this fruit and there is this migratory bird which is coming, and there is this whole species, whole community of those monkeys who would like love to be around these spaces where there is plenty of food available for them. So there is this zoo and Purana Killa which is over here. So it is pretty much dense area which is present over here. So we thought of converting them to like a park kind of thing which humans can visit, can visit. And there is this function of and yeah, the train lines and the road, that will be remain as it is. So like there was this initial thought of taking them underground, but like if at all we take them underground, the whole cycle of the flow of water which is going to be there throughout the site would be disturbed. So connecting these inner spaces with these pathways which might provide an experience of nature to the people, like but and there wouldn't be lying any other function other than the park and spaces which might provide public. But there is a space which has been inhabited by a migrate a lady who has been migrated from another city. So what
Well,
if
I think we should also say that to approach this, we've been looking at ourselves as certain characters. So Mohil decided to become a migratory bird who is in the city trying to do something. Smita was a lady who has come from somewhere who does not have money right now. So how she is going to set herself up in the city. And then there was Aryaman, who is somebody who is very technologically proactive and is trying to make changes in the city with his ability to be able to innovate technology wise. And I was somebody who was trying to set up a think tank in the city. And then there was Shikhar, who was somebody who was making boats, right?
yeah.
Yeah, so these were the character, and these were the lenses through which we then looked at what could happen in this within this larger idea. Yeah, continue.
Yeah, so taking that as a consideration of doing a role play of uh, each and every activity which we thought about. So like the Purana Killa would be converted as the place where the think tank would generate its function. So like people coming inside might be stimulated by how the Purana Killa has uh, hold up the discussions and how there are things put up over there. So like it's a place, it would be a place where the concerns of the city and the ideas how to uh, deal with things in the city could be improved. So like it is a place where ideas would be shared. So and this idea of like these two patches of land which are which are not which are not like it's like not much being used currently. So that we thought to connect this whole patch of land of India Gate where there are where there is a good activity of like a public space, so that connecting those through pathways which might
Mohil,
yeah.
Mohil, when you say we, is it the five of you, like the bird, the old lady, or who is we now? Who has made this green patch? Who has made the yellow patch?
Okay, yeah. So not us, it is there.
Or who has made this green boundary, which is like this? Is it the government?
I don't know like what who is handling this, but like this is just how it can be, an interpretation of how it can be.
So how it can be when? Many years later? Now? After
Like
something been put into action?
so considering nature as a thing, if we consider now as a point of intervention, it might be for a longer period of time. It might be acting for a longer period of time.
Okay, go on.
So yeah, so so the idea of creating this Greenland was that there was this there is this zoo also which has been holding the animals. So like removing the zoo, uh, I guess would take away the big public space, but in fact, thinking of that zoo with other species which might be coming there and going, so like species like monkeys, other birds, and there might be insects which have been staying inside. So it creates a bigger area for them to live into. And like how the story, how the role play of the lady who has been traveled to this city has generated, like she came and she uh, so,
Hi, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, so we were basically trying to interconnect these stories and see how, like as a group, with the role play being different species, we were trying to see how these different worlds would interconnect. So this was the basic idea, and this green area was kind of the area where like we started to look at like as an area which the bird would kind of move through and to start the intervention from. And then the Purana Killa became the think tank, which would be, and the area near the river was the area where the old woman settled. Could you go to the next? Um,
this one.
yeah, yeah. So,
I'll zoom into it.
Nikita, did you talk about this?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I've joined a little late.
Yeah. No, we were just talking about what the places were. So we thought that we could reappropriate the how the Purana Killa is used right now, reoccupy spaces within, and make it a culturally active space, as well as a space where people come to read, to discuss, and where different citizen groups intersect here. And because it is also a historical monument where people anyway come to for leisure, it also becomes a place where they encounter these other discussions which could be parallelly happening. So there are talks about and how Aryaman is somebody who is trying to use technology for the better of the city. So then there are this place sort of also becomes a place to discuss those innovations, have workshops where you conduct where people come and give their inputs on what could be designed, and somebody is there to implement it and things like that, and where you're actively fighting against something called some say climate change, and all of those discussions and design innovations could be occurring parallelly to to everything else that happens in the complex. So by people can encounter it by chance. And so that was about the Purana Killa complex. And then a little ahead from there is the old woman who is trying to set up a house or a living there. So she sort of begins searching for places where she can grow her vegetables and fruits, and try to live on her own. So she finds that's how she finds herself near the green patch and under the bridge. Yeah, I think Smita, you can take over.
Yeah, Mohil, can you please go to the next one?
Yeah.
Where, yeah. Yeah. So, so being this woman who's come from a different city, the idea was to see that any person who has a who comes from a different city, we all have different skills. So for this exercise, we like I I I assume that this person is a person who can cook very well, and she's come from a different city. And where does she then start to find a place for herself? So we thought that the area under the bridge could be reappropriated as a home, and then over there using only materials which are timber and bamboo, which cover up sort of making a sheet and covering up the upper part of the bridge, so that nothing falls from the bridge onto the top. And then and then the person who is making boats will also help this lady to kind of with the timber work and everything. And as a community, they start living there, and then um, to start earning so the next thing is to start earning a livelihood. So using the skills in an ecologically beneficial manner. So at first she starts to look for whatever is available in the area nearby, and she finds certain species of trees like mulberry and pear, and she collects those fruits and starts to sell them. And then she also has a certain supply from which she has carried with herself of food, of grains. So she can start making some snacks out of them. And she tries to find a place in the city where she can reach more people and sell these to her. So that would be at the junction of the roads, the Bhairomarg and the MG road. And then this was a kind of an attempt to see how could this simple act of inhabiting the of a person inhabiting the area below the bridge generate certain practices which might be beneficial for um, the other people and the other species of trees as well as animals. So the practices were firstly reappropriating the truss structure under the bridge using natural materials, and which could be done with the help of a community, and then consuming and growing local produce, like which are the local trees of the area. And which also invite many birds and insects to be there. And livelihood is also a thing which is done by by being sort of local, looking at the local area, and whatever extra is needed, there are some things that can be grown. So this could further be taken up like in future, this woman and the community might decide to start farming on the banks for the ingredients which are needed. And if there is surplus, that also might be sold, and that could again become a livelihood. And but even when that practice is taking place, so for example, when she's selling snacks, instead of selling them in a newspaper or plastic, she would collect leaves from the trees, and look at again a kind of practice which would not harm the nature. And those leaves would be dried and make them into vessels, and then pack the food in that. Sorry, pack the food in that. And and yes, the practice of cleaning the river, like the connection with the river, is that it would be used as a playground for children, a place for celebration, rituals, and then only the stones are repurposed as seats for people who want to spend a quiet time there. And this could be done in collaboration, and then every week in collaboration with the think tank, which is at Purana Kila, uh, and which aims to kind of promote this collaborative activity between different people and different institutions. Uh, the river cleaning could be taken up as something that the community does on a regular basis, and that in turn helps attract more migratory birds and create a more safe drinking water. And in all of this, the technology is a sort of thing which enables certain aspects. So in this like um, for example, using a stove which is not creating smoke, or using only uh, um, yeah, or different ways in which technology could aid, but without creating the waste products, which could necessarily not be taken back into the certain cycle. Yeah, that was the idea behind this.
My first question would be, are you comfortable with continuing to complete the project, or do you feel that the lack of enough participants will make life difficult? What do you think?
So I guess
Yeah.
the work which might be we need to put into might require more people to work on it, or else we can reduce the area which we are working on to a smaller patch of land.
No, actually there are 2 ideas or 3 ideas, no?
Yeah.
You have to demonstrate it over the whole land. There can be an idea that this space is something that can work, but then you demonstrate something, each of the 2 or 3 ideas in much more detail. Is that possible? What do you think?
Yeah, I guess.
Yes.
It's possible.
So if that is the case, then we can start discussing what you have said, if that's the case. So first of all, my feeling is that lone humans are expected to do things in this place. That woman who is cooking and that boat fellow, each one is an atomized or isolated individual. When we talk about a practice is something that happens between people and not just what one individual struggles to achieve. So what would be the larger dimension? Would there be one woman? Would there be 10 families? Would there be several of them who came? I think that's something that you can think about. Also, there will be many aspects. I mean, same person cannot be expected to go and collect leaves, then grow the vegetables, then cook the vegetables, then serve the vegetables, then do all the things, and that too in an eco-friendly way. She will die. There will have to be different families who do different things, and many age groups, and then one old person who simply sits around, picking the stones out of the rice, all day long. That's all that she does. He does. there will be a society of individuals, not an individual. I think that is something which you bear in. Same way the boat fellow, if he wants to make a boat, he'll have to get wood, he'll have to have the tools, he'll have, अरे अकेला तो कोई नहीं करेगा. Boat तो especially. If you want to make a patla or a small chair, it's okay. But if you want to make a boat, then it's always, because also you have to push the boat into the river, no? And that takes, hey, ho, hey, ho. You have to do that. Otherwise it can't move. So there is an entire dimension which is community based. And I think you have to think in those terms. Which brings me to the think tank. Whenever I hear this term, I think of a sort of huge tank or a small tank in which certain brains are stored. And when you need some advice or ideas or something, you open a tap, the right tap. You know, there'll be 15 taps like Stella Artois beer or that beer like that. There'll be taps of knowledge. And you open that tap and take one glass of that knowledge from the tank. So I think it's a very unfortunate term that has come from the idea of a captive generation of ideas. This comes from the field of management and advertising, but especially it comes from the military. The Pentagon was the first one to use think tanks. So can we have a different word for it, first of all? So I thought, at first I thought, let's call it a think bomb. But then I thought, no, we are eschewing violence, no? So what
too close to a stink bomb too.
Yeah, yes. What shall we call this damn place? And it is, you know, in the Greeks would call it the agora. In our case, we did not have an agora, but there was the Divane Am, in which anybody could go and make a complaint or discuss something. Any poet who had come up with a new poem could go and read it there. Any musician who wanted to impress people would go there. So the Divane Am or the Sabhagruh, which is the place of interaction. It is not a storage of ideas, but it is the birth of ideas through interaction with each other, which is supported by reference in textual and other materials. You know, the National Institute of Advanced Studies in Bangalore, or the Shimla, in Shimla they have this, what is it called? It's in the Viceroy's house, where if you are selected as a scholar there, you go and live there. Your only job you are required to do is to eat, drink, and be at the dinner table discussing things with others, out of which comes out a book every year. It's a very wonderful notion. So think about the place of generating ideas, and whether it should be lots of little places and maybe one big place also. And then from there, will there be a processional path? In what manner will this village of boat people and cooks be connected to the Sabhagruh or the Darbar? People's Darbar. This will be People's Darbar.
Yeah.
So how will that be connected? How will the two be connected? will there be a kind of pulling of the old knowledge in a cart to throw into the river? Will there be a bringing of water from the river to water the banyan tree which is in the thing, so that everybody can participate, not only those who call themselves scholars, but everybody is allowed, and it becomes a public function, like the carnival. You know, in South America and in Goa also they have this carnival. What is carnival? This is where all the giants and crazy creatures can come out for a day. So like that, the scholars can come out for a day in their finery, you know, and they are seated across the street which goes to the river. There they are dunked into the river like Varki used to do. You know, everybody who graduated was taken to that pond and dunked in the river as a final graduation ceremony. And like that, can you think of some fun things that happen between this village and the think tank? Or the Sabhagru, right? Let's not use the word think tank. Will also musicians, dancers, storytellers, will they also come there into the Sabhagru?
Yeah.
So suppose there is one Tijan Bai. Have you heard of Tijan Bai? Tijan Bai is a woman who specializes in telling Ramayana stories. But the way she alone, she comes on stage and she holds 1,000 people spellbound. Like that. That kind of person will also come. So this will be the place of performance as well. And then to go to the we are going through the forest. Because the forest is there all the time. You have to leave the city and go through the forest in order to reach this magical place. How do you create that magic? So what I would suggest is that you take one corner of your killa with the forest outside, the gate in, and some things inside, and draw it in detail. Same way that village should be drawn in detail. And 3, 4, 5 locations on the path should also be drawn in detail. Also, I think you should make the entry to the forest something which makes you feel, now I'm changing, I'm going somewhere. So there are maybe 8, 10 entries into this forest from different points. But there is a sense of, you know, I lived next to Nairobi National Park when I was in Kenya. This is a fantastic thing. On your space I will put 2 photographs of the Nairobi National Park. It is 250 square miles of grassland in which there are zebras and giraffes and rhino, even lions, leopards. All of them are living there. And it was 3 kilometers from my house. Today the city has surrounded it. And I'll send you photographs to show what has happened. But this space has that potential of being a magical place to go away and think afresh. Like Arshia was talking about the forest. So think about the community that lives inside the forest and tends to your need, and think about those who retreat there to think. Then you will get a better structured thought process. So I would say you only take that small strip between the killa and the village as the main area in which you will work at the moment. Later, somebody else who takes it up will expand it. Got it? That's the way my reaction.
So there's like another term which came up when we were talking about think tanks. So I was thinking of this human library where humans are the source of information of everything, not just knowledge, but like as we were talking about music and different art related things. So like a stimulation.
In a library, a book has to remain the same forever. Humans cannot be libraries. What I spoke yesterday, today I will change it. Even within 10 minutes, I can change and I can critique this project in a completely different way. Don't make humans into dead things.
Yeah.
It is an ongoing, there is no end.
But also look at the flooding of the river that happens from time to time. And then the water level goes up to the bottom of the truss.
Yeah.
So your habitation, which is coming up under the bridge, has to adapt, has to keep working around that water level. And the water level is a friend and a foe both, because you are dependent on the water. You're dependent on fishing, maybe you're dependent on the growing of vegetables from the water. But at times it's also the foe, and you have to escape it. And then the interaction between the communities, between the boat builders community and perhaps the cooking community also has to kind of come together to find ways of creating habitat which is immune to the flows of the river. So I think one will give rise to other ways of imagining and innovative ways of imagining. So right there is a think tank in operation already, without being a think tank.
I've put the Nairobi National Park photographs in Majnu Katila. Just have a look, you'll be amazed. Sudipto, I used to go there every Sunday. All these buildings were not there around it at that time.
So there is no gate. There is no entry.
There are actually. You had to buy a ticket. I had an annual pass with my car number on it, and with 5 people in that car for all the national parks in Kenya. And every month I used to go.
But what defines the edge of this grassland and the city?
There's a fence. But you see, the fence is sort of notional in a way. And the lions keep on walking into the city. I remember when I was a child, our house was on the Nairobi River. It's a small stream actually, Kush River Jaisa nahi hai, but Nairobi River it was called, which passed through National Park and then passed through Nairobi. And one lion had just kept walking along the river and arrived in the city, and traffic was stopped because there was a bridge across that at 2 places. And traffic was stopped on both sides. And for half a day, nobody could do anything. Schools were closed, everything was, because there was a lion in the river. It was fantastic. Still happens. I'm told recently one lion came in.
A different kind of lion in the river than Dilip mentioned.
Yeah. So what do you think, you guys? Think it's interesting to work on this thing?
Yeah, sir. We can go with it.
Nikita?
Like give it.
My thing is that I have to.
Yeah, your thing is I know, but on the phone you can give instructions to friends.
Yeah, I let them know a few days. I let them know a few days earlier only that I have jury, but I've been hanging around. But I'm trying to, because I'm doing 3 things at the same time. It's a little stressful for me.
And Smita?
Yeah, I will take this up. Yes.
Yeah. And who was that fourth? Aryaman. He had briefly appeared on the scene.
He's still there.
Oh.
Oh, he's just like that drawing, which is the icon of. He peeps from time to time.
Are you there?
I've not seen his face this entire time.
Yeah, we haven't seen his face.
Actually, I did once. I really pushed for him to.
Yeah, even we did once, and he showed a face with a mask on. So it was like a glimpse.
He's becoming a myth. Huh?
Maybe there is no such person.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
He's a bot.
He's not even unmuting his mic.
He's not in a talkable environment, is what he told us. He's
testing us. Actually, he's testing us. Good. So, Sudipto, are we through for the morning?
We are through for the day. I was just thinking whether the last 2 groups, the Kaka Nagar, which has also got that forest thing, and whether it could be combined or whether there is any value in it, or it'll just add to confusion. I think we should just leave them.
No, I think new fights will start.
Yeah.
Let them be where they are.
No, I think the scale is what we have sort of mentioned. If just the corner of the Killa, inside and outside, and how it connects is something very tangible and very between 3 or 4 of them, I think it's manageable. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. Mohil, Smita.
Yeah.
And the nature of the drawing, I think you need a little bit more scale because it's becoming too childlike. Childlike is not bad, but I think the you can start looking at a little bit more, in terms of human heights, in terms of how much space is required if you are building into the truss, if you're hanging things from there, how much will you spread out of the truss area?
Good test of that is the drawing should speak for itself. Imagine that it's a competition where you are not personally allowed to present anything and nobody will read. These are all Chinese judges. They can't read English. Okay? Now you do it.
Yeah.
That can be told to all the groups actually. That the judges are from Mars and they have no language. ठीक है गुड तो शाम को मिलते हैं
हाँ 5 बजे रंजीत
yes
and the last lecture in ChaiPoché conversation, so everyone be there. All right,
see you then. Bye.
He is still here. Okay, I'm stopping.